Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take the sources you've shared with us and really pull out the most important insights custom built just for you.
And today, we're diving into the wealth gap. Now, it's a huge topic, right? Everyone talks about it.
Constantly.
But the sources we have here, a personal finance video, some really deep data in a report, and an article defining wealth, they give us a chance to, really get under the hood.
Yeah, understand what it actually is, why it's happening, and crucially, what it all means for you.
We've got insights from Modern Wealth Mindset, that Pew Research Center report, and Disparity.
Exactly. And our mission here is to pull out those key facts, maybe some surprising stuff, and the actionable takeaways so you can navigate this whole complex issue a bit better.
Okay, so let's unpack this. First things first. To even talk about the wealth gap, we need to be clear on what wealth actually is. It's definitely not just your income.
Right, and that's a really crucial distinction. The sources hammer home. Income is, the money flowing in your paycheck. Basically, it's a flow. But wealth. Investopedia defines it as what you own minus what you owe. So your accumulated stuff, house, stocks, savings, minus your debts. It's a stock, something you build up.
Yeah, think of it like this. You could have two people earning the exact same high salary, right?
Okay.
But if one spends every penny and the other saves and invests, well, only that second person is actually building wealth.
Gotcha. So net worth assets minus liabilities, that's the number we're really looking at for wealth.
That's the standard measure, yeah. And the sources also point out wealth is often about owning scarce things not everyone can just have.
And how we feel about being wealthy is often relative, right? Compared to the people around us.
Definitely. And the stark reality, which comes through in all the sources, is that, well, globally and nationally, a very small group at the top 1%, maybe the top 10%, they own a huge disproportionate slice of the pie.
The Modern Wealth Mindset video really calls this out. It suggests it's not just about individuals being successful, but there are maybe structural advantages at play.
Right. And Investopedia puts a number on it, like the top 1% holding over 30% of U.S. wealth recently. Pretty staggering.
Okay, that really sets the stage. So what has actually been happening with this gap? The Pew Research report has the hard data, particularly for the U.S.
It does, and it tells a pretty clear story. So yes, median household income, it has grown overall since the 70s.
Okay, some growth.
But that growth slowed way down after 2000.
Yeah.
There was actually a 15-year period, believe it or not, from 2000 to 2015, where the median income basically didn't increase at all. It was flat.
Wow, 15 years. And not just slow growth, but skewed growth, right?
Hugely skewed. Between 1970 and 2018, the median income for upper-income households jumped 64%, middle income, 49%, lower income, only 43%.
So the gap widened there already.
And even within that top group, the gains went mostly to the very, very top. The top 5% saw faster growth than the rest of the top 20%, especially back in the 80s and 90s.
So what did that do to the overall share of income?
Big shift. The middle class used to get the biggest slice of the total income pie, like 62% back in 1970. By 2018, that had dropped to just 43%. Meanwhile, the upper income share went from 29% up to 48%.
Wow. They basically swapped places in terms of share.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And that's just income. Pew points out, and this is key, that wealth is the real measure of financial security.
Right. The cushion, the foundation.
Exactly. There was a boom period for wealth, mid-90s to mid-2000s, driven by housing and stocks. Median net worth went up quite a bit by 2007.
But then
the Great Recession hit, and this is where the wealth picture gets pretty grim for a lot of people. Median net worth just tanked, fell 30% by 2013.
40%, that's huge.
It is. And get this. As recently as 2016, the typical American family's net worth was still lower than it was way back in 1998.
So nearly 2 decades wiped out in terms of typical wealth accumulation.
For the median family, yeah. Wealth recovery has been much, much slower than income recovery for most people.
And I imagine that hit different groups differently.
Oh, massively. This is where the wealth divide really exploded, according to the Pew data. Look at the numbers from 2001 to 2016. During that period, middle-income families actually lost 20% of their median wealth.
Lost wealth.
Lower-income families lost even more, a staggering 45%.
Unbelievable.
Meanwhile, upper-income families, they were the only group whose median wealth increased. It went up by 33%.
So the rich got richer, and everyone else actually got poorer in terms of wealth.
In terms of median wealth, yes. Look at the ratio. Back in 1983, upper-income families had about 3.4 times the wealth of middle-income families. By 2016, that jumped to 7.4 times.
More than doubled the gap.
And compared to lower-income families, it went from 28 times the wealth in '83 to 75 times the wealth in 2016.
Just incredible divergence.
And it gets even more extreme if you look at the very top, the richest 5%. The gap between them and families just above the bottom fifth. It more than doubled between '89 and 2016.
So why? Why did it diverge so sharply, especially after the recession?
Pew suggests a big reason was what people owned. Middle-income families typically had most of their wealth tied up in their homes.
Right, home equity.
Which got hammered by the housing crash and recovered slowly. Upper-income families, though, held more diverse asset stocks. Business equity, which bounced back much faster with the stock market recovery.
Ah, makes sense. Asset mix mattered hugely.
Hugely. And Pew also notes, just for context, that income inequality in the U.S. is significantly higher than in other major developed countries, the G7 nations.
Okay, so we see the gap, we see it widening dramatically. The next logical question is, why? What are the drivers?
Right. What are the root causes? The Modern Wealth Mindset video really stresses that understanding the why is crucial if we want to think about, well, potential solutions or even just how to navigate it.
So what do the sources point to?
Several things come up. One big one is unequal access to quality education, to opportunities. That kind of sets people on different tracks right from the start.
Okay, that's foundational.
Then there's a huge disparity in access to capital and investment. I mean, if you already have wealth, you have money to put into things that generate more money, right? Stocks, real estate, starting a business, your money works for you.
Whereas if you're starting from scratch,
You're mostly working for money. And things like inheritance generational wealth give some people a massive head start. That's part of what the video calls those structural advantages.
got it. What else? Policies.
Yeah, economic and tax policies get mentioned. The example given is how taxes on capital gains, profit from investments, are often lower than taxes on regular income from a job. That tends to benefit people who already have assets.
Interesting point.
Then there's automation and globalization. Jobs getting displaced, especially lower skilled ones, manufacturing shifts. That puts pressure on wages and job security for a lot of folks.
We hear a lot about that.
And tied into that, another major point from the Modern Wealth video, the cost of living just keeps climbing. Housing, healthcare, education are way more expensive.
Yeah.
But for many people, wages haven't kept up.
The classic squeeze makes it hard to save, let alone invest.
Exactly. It just eats away at your purchasing power. Pew also throws in things like the decline of labor unions and the minimum wage not keeping pace with inflation as contributing factors.
And there's this idea mentioned, the Great Gatsby curve.
Right. Both Pew and Investopedia touch on that. It basically suggests that higher inequality in one generation might actually make it harder for the next generation to move up the economic ladder.
Yeah.
Less social mobility.
Okay, wow. That paints a pretty challenging picture. Lots of big systemic forces. It could feel, well, kind of overwhelming for an individual.
It absolutely can. And the Modern Wealth Mindset video acknowledges that. These big trends aren't just abstract numbers. They have real effects on you.
Like what, specifically?
Well, on a personal level, it can feel like that ladder of opportunity is just harder to climb limited social mobility. It definitely increases financial stress, worry.
I can see that.
And it can delay major life goals, buying a home, feeling secure enough to retire, affording education for yourself or your kids.
So, okay, we have this massive, complex problem with the deep roots. What does this actually mean for you, the listener? This is where the sources, especially that Modern Wealth Mindset video, kind of pivot, right?
They do. And it might seem a bit counterintuitive after talking about all these huge systemic issues, but the message is, despite all that, you do have agency. You have power in your own financial life.
So the system might need fixing, and that's slow and complicated, but individuals can still take action.
Precisely. Individuals can take concrete steps to build their own financial resilience, their own wealth, even within the current system. It's about focusing on what you can control.
Okay, let's talk strategies then. What do the sources suggest you can actually do?
This is the really practical takeaway. First off, invest in yourself, your skills, your education. The video frames this as your single most powerful asset. Keep learning, keep adapting, increase your earning potential.
Makes sense. What's next?
Master the basics of personal finance, budgeting, saving, understanding, and managing debt. It sounds simple, maybe even boring, but it's fundamental. You need to control where your money is going to free up cash to actually build wealth.
Getting your financial house in order.
Exactly. And then a huge piece of advice that's really emphasized. Start investing early and consistently.
Even small amounts.
Yes, even small, regular amounts. The power they talk about is compounding, how time lets your money grow on itself. putting money regularly into diversified things like low-cost index funds or ETFs over decades. That's how the video says ordinary people can build substantial wealth.
Consistency and time are key there.
Absolutely. Another non-negotiable they mention is tackling bad debt, especially high-interest debt, like credit cards. That stuff actively works against you, just drains your resources. Paying it off frees up money for building wealth.
Clear the decks before you build.
You got it. Then, think about multiple income streams. Don't just rely on the one paycheck if you can help it. Explore side hustles, freelancing, passive income opportunities. It diversifies your risk and can accelerate wealth building.
Diversify income, not just investment.
Good way to put it. And finally, don't go it alone. Seek out mentors, networks, learn from people who've successfully built wealth, and surround yourself with supportive, financially mindful people.
Community and learning from others. Now, the video does briefly mention advocating for bigger policy changes too, right?
It does, acknowledging the importance of systemic change. But the real actionable focus from these sources for you as an individual is squarely on those personal finance levers you can pull yourself.
Okay. So bringing this deep dive toward a close, it seems clear the wealth gap is, well, it's real, it's significant, it's complex, and the data shows it's been growing, driven by some deep structural things.
And it definitely impacts people's lives, creates stress, limits opportunities.
But the really compelling takeaway from this particular set of sources is that message of agency. While the big picture is daunting, focusing on what you can control, your skills, your spending and saving habits, investing consistently, maybe finding extra income that's presented as a powerful way to build your own financial foundation, your own resilience, regardless of those broader economic headwinds.
It definitely leaves you something to think about, doesn't it? Considering all that data, those trends, and then these personal strategies, what's the one single idea or concept about building your own wealth in this environment, pulled from these sources, that really stands out most to you personally, and why? Something to chew